some of my crew could pull the people outside in, that would be great. Yeah, how you doing? Good. One thing that just barely got mentioned earlier was the passage of Proposition 4, the climate bond, which many people in here worked to get passed. And that was a really big thing because lots of money is going to be available to protect lands, invest in climate activities, water projects. There's $1 billion in there for regenerative, sustainable food systems. So it was a really exciting that passed. So I just want to thank everybody in here that voted yes on Prop 4 because that was a big thing. So come on, we got to get everybody in. We have the last session. Please sit down. We have a whole hour after that of reception. So you have a lot more time to talk. But we want to give the Undersecretary, Jenny Lester Moffitt, some time to speak to you all, who has been a big ally. This project would not have happened without her department, the Agricultural Marketing Service. They funded the regional food system partnership project, which was the funding for this for 3 years. And it allowed us to put these events on, to do all the research, to do all the outreach, and produce the materials, the website that you saw. So we're really grateful to your department and the crew that you work with because that really made this possible. It wouldn't happen. So, and as some of you know, she was the Deputy Secretary here at CDFA working with Karen Ross, who will be here for the reception. And then she went to USDA where she's been running this department for 4 years, right? 3.5, that's right. Yeah, 3.5. That's right, takes a while. But anyway, thank you very much for coming, and it's all yours.
Okay, well, thank you, Michael. It's really nice to be back here. A little over a year from year and a half, yeah, from when we were all gathered here really talking about what's the art of the possible. And there were a lot of aha moments. That was my big takeaway from that was the conversations that happened at tables where people said, here's what happens in my business and on my ranch or in my processing operation, and where people in the food supply chain could understand that so that then we can really actually form those connections like what UC was able to announce earlier today, which is the first tranche of procurement and purchases that are really born out of this program. So it's really great to see that kind of action take place. And yes, it's funding that makes that happen. It's people that really make that happen. And it's all of you coming to these meetings when I know you all have a lot of other things. I used to run my family's farming operation. I know the different hats we all wear and what really drives all of us. But these conversations and these convenings are really, really important. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing at USDA. We talk about, and what we've talked about recently at USDA over the past year or so is really, the Secretary talks about we've been at these pivotal moments in society, in agriculture particularly. Of course, back in the 1800s when President Lincoln at that time recognized the need for a Department of Agriculture, a cabinet Department of Agriculture in the U.S. government, he formed what he called the People's Department, the United States Department of Agriculture. That was a pivotal moment, a moment in which we really brought together a framework and a department that supported farmers, ranchers in rural America. Even though we're the Department of Agriculture, we have a whole suite of rural programs as well that USDA has. Critical, pivotal moment. Another huge pivotal moment in United States agriculture, of course, was during the Dust Bowl. When we saw very quickly what happens with a degraded landscape, what happens when we're focused on productivity with also not conservation at the same time, and the things that came out of that, the programs that were born out of that, supporting farmers and ranchers also through the Depression, but also the soil conservation services. Huge pivotal moment in United States Department of Agriculture, in U.S. agriculture. Fast forward to the 1970s when we had a former Secretary of Agriculture, Earl Butz, who said we need to win the race for food security, and we need to plant fence row to fence row, really focused on productivity and productivity only. That has been the spirit in United States agriculture for the past 40 or so years at this point. We've realized, I would say probably before the pandemic, but I think the pandemic made everyone else realize as well the need that we are now at another pivotal moment. We're at a pivotal moment where we have a food supply chain that has really focused on the spirit of, as we'll say, get big or get out. And so we at USDA in the Biden-Harris administration have really been focused on how do we reverse that trend? How do we really change the dynamics in agriculture, the dynamics in the food system? So we're focused more on the farmers. We're focused more on, certainly productivity is an important factor in it, but there are many other factors as well. How do we make sure that small farmers continue to have the livelihood to stay on the land, to continue to do the things that they're doing, and to really generate more revenue opportunities, and do so in a way that is actually building the sustainability, not just of the farming operation, which is critical, rural communities, but also, and most importantly, also how the food is being produced, who's producing it, how it's being produced, and land conservation, and all of those different aspects that I know you've all been having really important conversations about. That is the focus that we've been having at USDA, is on this next pivotal moment where we're really reversing a trend where we focus on consolidation and saying instead, we've got to invest in everyone in agriculture, and we've got to invest in the next generation in agriculture. We need to invest in a much more diverse agriculture. And so we've been doing that through a bounty of different things. One is through our Climate Smart Partnerships program, the Climate Smart Commodities program, really bringing together, so the Secretary announced $3 billion in funding that he invested through the Commodity Credit Corporation, the CCC funds, really about investing in organizations that formed between themselves and said, we're going to solve for XYZ problem, whether it is, of course, regenerative meat production or climate smart soy production, byproducts in production as well, right? So you're not just selling your meat, which is obviously very important, but you're also selling the hides. You're also looking at all of the other revenue streams that are going to come off of the land. You're selling the, I think Michael Delbar said that the ecosystem services. And when I came to CDFA, I did not know what that term meant. I guess my family was farming that way, but we just never call it ecosystem services. But it is, I can't find a better word for it. So it is an appropriate term to use. All of those different services that are being provided on our farms, that farmers are doing on a daily basis, to be able to find and quantify and then be able to find revenue streams for those services. So that's what the Climate Smart Commodities program is all about. It's over 250 projects around the country that are happening, where folks are coming together, they're identifying and quantifying the services that farmers and ranchers are doing in different spaces, and then identifying new market opportunities, new revenue streams for producers to be able to capture those services that are being provided on the farm. I've been leading the work that we've been doing at the department on what we call the food systems transformation. That is building more new and better markets for producers, particularly focused on small, mid-sized, and underserved producers. And we've been doing that in a suite of different ways. So when the American Rescue Plan was passed in early 2021, the American Rescue Plan gave USDA $4 billion, coming from state agriculture. Billion is a hard word for me to really wrap my head around. But we had $4 billion to, what they said, transform the food system, build and strengthen and diversify market opportunities for producers so they have more places to sell their product, more value opportunities, more revenue stream opportunities as well. So the first thing that the team did when this money was passed was to listen. They held listening sessions and heard from folks about what was needed. And what they heard from folks was at USDA we have some programs that are really important. For example, the program that funded this project, that is funded through the Farm Bill, that are really important in building the capacity for people like here we are together to come together to identify a resource need, to identify a need, to build market opportunities, to really dialogue about that. That is really critical. We have these programs, but what we don't have is we don't have food supply chain infrastructure programs. We don't have programs that are designed to build more processing capacity, programs that are designed to build distribution capacity, programs that are really focused on how are we also driving demand through how we purchase food as well. And so we really have been focused on those. Of course, we did as an additional funding through the American Rescue Plan for what's called the umbrella programming dollars that Congress has called this program, the Resilient Food System Partnership Program, along with the Farmers Market and Local Food Promotion Program, as well as the Value Added Producer Program. All of those grant programs are under this umbrella that's called the Local Agriculture Market Program that Congress has authorized in the 2018 Farm Bill. In addition to that, so we did some plus-ups there with additional money through the American Rescue Plan, but we really focused the American Rescue Plan dollars as well as additional dollars on strengthening the food supply chain. So we've done that through $1 billion in investments in meat and poultry processing. So this was announced 3 years ago. At USDA, we have several programs even within that space. The Meat and Poultry Processing Expansion Program, the Meat and Poultry Inspection Readiness Grant Program, so that people who are already processors who need some additional money to be able to get federally or state inspection readiness grant programs, they were able to get some funding to be able to get federally inspected so that they can start to sell to more market opportunities. We call it the local MCAP program, the Local Meat Capacity Grant Program. I know Creamco has been a recipient of one of those. And then also through some tribal grant programs as well. So through a series of different grant programs, but also technical assistance. Something that's been really meaningful to me coming from agriculture is I always saw grant opportunities. I knew it was just not, I was the only person in our farm that was in the office. It wasn't something that we could apply for grants. We didn't have the capacity to be able to do that. We didn't have the capacity, there's no grant manager to manage a grant. So important to me was an investment that we made of $25 million in the Meat and Poultry Processing Technical Assistance Grant Program. And this was a program where we invested in technical assistance providers throughout the country. So the Niche Meat Project, Flower Hill Institute, a whole bunch of different organizations who have been providing technical assistance to meat and poultry processors, whether it is to be able to get grant dollars from USDA or simply to be able to, to get the technical assistance they need to be able to attain new markets, whether that is HACCP planning, business development planning, all of those things that we as food businesses need to be able to achieve a market opportunity. So we invested $1 billion in meat and poultry processing. That was really important to us. We've also invested money, $400 million into what's the Resilient Food System Infrastructure Program. That's money that's being administered through state departments of agriculture for everything but meat and poultry processing, because we've been doing direct for the meat and poultry processing. Investment in the middle of the supply chain has been really critical for, I would imagine, for ranchers, for farmers, to be able to have opportunity to bring product to market, get product processed closer to home, not have to bring it as far, to be able to have more distribution opportunities as well, to sell product when you are processing, but importantly also, there's market opportunities. And so that's where some of the programs that we've also developed have been really important. So we have 3 now programs: the Local Foods for Schools, the Local Food Purchase Assistance Program, and now a new Local Foods for Child Care program that we've developed as well. Because we knew, importantly, we have to invest, absolutely must invest in the capacity for everyone to be able to process their product, distribute their product, but also there's an opportunity to be able to sell direct to schools. There's an opportunity to be able to sell direct to food banks, which is the local food purchase assistance. And what better provider of food for schools, for food banks, now for child care settings, than local farmers and ranchers? We saw, right, during the pandemic, so many of us stepped up and donated product or sold product to schools and to food banks. The donations are great in a pinch, but that doesn't pay the bills. And so the local food purchase assistance program really starts to solidify that partnership between food banks and local producers to be able to sell at market price. So not even just at like the commodity price, at market price, to be able to sell to schools, to food banks. And importantly also is a part of that program is also investing in the infrastructure, the coordination capacity. There's a lot of steps that people need to take to be able to get their product into a school system. There's a lot, so aggregation and food hubs and how do we do coordinated purchasing and all of that different aspect. So we've been really focused at USDA on the systems approach. The food system, and this is, you know, if there's one lesson that I've learned from my dad, it is that, as you know, we are organic farmers, and so for us, it's in a system. Everything is tied together on our farm. The farming is a system, and so is the food system. Everything is tied together, and we can't just invest in processing and not also invest in marketing and purchasing opportunity. We can't invest in those two if also we haven't really thought about what is the plan. What is, I call this project like a meat shed plan, right? So it's looking at what is the meat shed, which of course is really important. We need to know what's there and what's available. And I would imagine, I'm not a purchaser for University of California, but I would imagine UC needs to know, what does that body look like so that they can make sure they've got a steady supply of product coming in that is, of course, of really the high quality that so many of you all in the room are producing. So it's a systems approach. Also part of this systems approach is making sure that the markets are fair and competitive. So we've done a bunch of rules on the Packers and Stockyard Act to make sure that we're really leveling the playing field. We've been partnering with Department of Justice and taking enforcement actions on some of the bad actors in the system who have really tried to squeeze out small producers from market opportunities. And so competition is really, really important too. I'll wrap up by saying also, because I know there's a conversation about product of the USA, that is critical. And we did do rulemaking last year on product of the USA. It is, of course, it has to be a voluntary program, a mandatory program. We already tried that, and we lost in the World Trade Organization. We lost. We lost by all of the other companies who fought against us. That wasn't something that we were able to do. So Congress tried that. The administration and the Obama administration tried that, and we lost in court. So this voluntary product of the USA labeling is the way that we actually get around it. It's a way, since it's voluntary, and I know because I've had many conversations with with Canada, who is really adamantly opposed to this. They're looking at ways to even try to fight this, and they can't because it is a voluntary program. So I know it's not perfect, but it's the best that we can do given the court system, given the WTO that we have. So I just wanted to address that as well. It's something that I know we've tried. We still haven't found a way around. Secretary Vilsack reminds people, if you find a way to do it where we can do it and it's WTO compliant, we'll definitely give it our best. But we haven't heard from people about ways in which we can do it where that is WTO compliant. So I just wanted to address that piece as well. Really been focused on how do we build a stronger, more resilient food system? How do we make sure that the foods that we at USDA have a regulatory system that levels the playing field for everyone to be able to compete fairly in there, that we're also driving and we're using our own power of procurement to make that happen. Of course, everything that we buy in USDA foods is domestic. It has to be born, raised, processed, and slaughtered here in the United States. And all of that happens through a whole systems approach that we've been doing. It goes back to the core tenet that we're at this pivotal moment. Since my lifetime, we've lost over 550,000 farmers and ranchers here in the United States. And we're really hoping that through the work that we've been doing, through the body of programs that have been developed, through the transformational change that is made, these are one-time investments. We always knew that the American Rescue Plan was one-time investment as a way to really invest in the industry that will invest in itself over time. And I'm looking forward to seeing really just the change that's happened. I mean, this one program alone, right, that we've funded, it's an $800,000 grant project that already is generating well over $1 million in new revenue streams for producers. That's just today. And over the course of the years, that's going to grow and grow and grow. So that investment is paying off and paying dividends right now. And that is our entire focus, has been really investing dollars now that pay dividends for producers for years to come through market-based approaches. So I'll stop there. I know, Michael, you probably have some questions, but I just want to, again, thank you all for your time being here and being part of this conversation and making this happen.
Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to have you back in California, and your family farm is just like 30 minutes away, right? It's great. I have one question that I want to open the audience. I have actually a few questions, but I'm not going to hog all the time. I just want to ask the first one because I really thought that was this idea of pivotal moments is really important. You outlined many new programs. Some are one-time programs, but some are continuing programs. So what can we do, people in this room, other parts of the country that share this vision of kind of restructuring the system to include a lot more scaled producers, different scales of production? What can we do to continue to support the USDA programs that you talked about?
Well, I mean, certainly participation is always important, right? And so making sure that the processors that we've been investing in continue to have the throughput that they need to make ends meet, right? To make those plants pencil out, the processing pencil out. But I think the biggest thing is just thinking bold, making sure that we're not just looking at traditional markets, food bank markets. Of course, here in this conversation, you know, farm to institution markets are really, I think, a big thing. So looking at how do we diversify the market and where are the opportunities there. One thing I also didn't talk about is that we've created 12 regional food business centers. Yeah. And that is going to be longstanding infrastructure that USDA now has. I liken it to, you know, all my life growing up, we were partnered and on our farm, we worked with NRCS on conservation practices. NRCS would come out to our farm, they'd walk the field with my dad, say, what are your ideas and thoughts for the farm, develop a conservation plan, and then come back with some EQIP dollars to make that happen, to implement the irrigation system or the cover crop or whatever it was that they were funding. Regional food business centers are doing the same thing, and they're being stood up, and you see Cooperative Extension is the lead here in this region. And it's about that. It's about providing place-based technical assistance, meeting with food producers, helping to identify where their problems and opportunities are, shepherding through that. Of course, they also have and will be helping with grant opportunities, so applying for funding that USDA does have for grants. And then the last one is they'll have their own funding as well through business builders. So I think reach out to the Regional Food Business Center if you are needing support. This is really our way of really having now an infrastructure at USDA on the food business side that we hadn't had before like we do on the conservation side.
I know Paul Towers is in the room. His crew is working on this. Actually, Tim Galerno is part of that. So if you want to learn more, we're actually going to be working with CDFA on the regional food system infrastructure, the development of a plan for infrastructure in the state of California, and we'll be interacting with these guys on that. So there are some exciting things. People in this room can help you connect with all of that. So is there any question? Because I have another one, but does anybody have a question they would like to ask right now? Not yet? Okay. So you run AMS, Agricultural Marketing Service, but there are other departments, many other departments in USDA. And when you think about the future, what do you think about, what can we do with those departments that you think we should be thinking about?
Well, so I run AMS and APHIS.
And APHIS, that's right. Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
So, yeah, we've got
that's a lot of work.
11,000 people and a $8 billion budget. Yeah. So, yes. And a lot of that is actually like $4 billion of that is what we do in purchasing every single year. So, the opportunity for USDA to move the needle on how the food supply chain works through purchasing is our purchasing power is huge. So one of the things that we did about a year and a half ago was we have USDA has an organic working group. We've had it for a while. It was started in the Obama administration, and it has been continuing. We have, of course, also a big organic transition initiative that we launched a couple years ago as well that we're really excited about. I won't talk as much about that right now, but one of the things we did a couple years ago was we launched a food systems fellowship program. So we now have over 40 fellows that we have funded at USDA that are now leading the conversation across USDA and really generating a lot more. So we have a whole of department approach to how we talk about food systems and how our different programs are touching on food systems. Rural Development now has a food systems advisor. And of course, Rural Development has a fair amount of programs on food systems. NIFA has, of course, programs that are funding food systems as well. There's all of these different ways in which we at the department are touching on food systems and in the food supply chain. And we're really now more intentionally than ever bringing everyone together to have those conversations, to think about how we're designing our programs, and really reflecting on are our programs reaching the right people? Are they making the right impact? And I think that really is happening a lot through the fellows that we've brought on board. These are people who are, I'm looking at their resumes. Now as I get to meet them, they are just experts in their field across the place. And so we have fellows, of course, that are working with each of the food business centers. We have fellows that are working with states on the RFSI program. And then what importantly that they're doing is they're bringing these conversations together. So I think it was just mentioned that there was a conversation on sustainable food production earlier today. I imagine it was driven by our group of fellows who are really starting to shepherd different conversations that are happening. So those people will remain. They're on their career. They're on staff at USDA and really driving change through conversation, through program design, through making sure that we're really intentional about making sure that we're reaching small and underserved producers, that we're reaching producers who haven't had an opportunity or who haven't really felt comfortable coming to USDA before. And you mentioned, of course, some organizations. That's been on purpose. We know that USDA has a place in some places, but other places where we're trying to reach producers that don't feel comfortable coming to USDA because of a lot of history that USDA has. They can come to trusted advisors that we're funding that can help facilitate that dialogue to give people that layer of comfort of coming to someone that they trust, they know, a nonprofit or an organization that's in their region that they've been getting services from before. Now we're paying them to also be an extension, essentially, of USDA.
That's interesting. I like that. It kind of reminds me, there are reflections from the earlier conversation where Lauren brought up this idea of soil diversity and then the diversity of an operation, the need for all these different kinds of revenue streams, which you mentioned earlier, the need for more revenue streams for farms, not just one, not just the commodity, but what all these other things they can do. So that it's very encouraging to hear after 30 years in this world how systemically the department is thinking now. That's a big step. I know it began at CDFA. Maybe 20 years ago it started, and now it's at USDA. That's a really good thing. And let's hope that it continues. I'm looking at my Growing Grass partner, who's administrator for a partnership for Climate Smart Commodities project, the Growing Grass project. Do you have any thoughts or things you want to ask or I'm putting you on the spot there, Jim.
It seems to be a theme, Michael. No, happy to talk. Thank you so much, Undersecretary Moffitt. I think for us, what we always see is that just what you're talking about, it has to be the whole. I mean, we're talking about byproducts, right? The beef and bison byproducts, but it only matters if the processor has the ability to do that in the first place. And really, partly what got us into this was recognizing as the money was going out for the meat processing grants that a lot of folks weren't building byproduct sales plans and collection plans. And they were coming to us saying, hey, can you do that? And we're like, how about that be part of USDA's grant work? And are you seeing that kind of coming together of those different markets, or some other tools there, I guess, would be a question, not just in the funding the meat processing, but actually in the marketing stuff, because we know that hasn't been done. American leather isn't really something promoted, right? We haven't been promoting some of those things, and that's literally this project, right? All of it is raised in the U.S., slaughtered in the U.S. kind of hides and byproducts. So that would be a question. Are there things in those spaces where you bring those value proposition together under a marketing kind of lens?
Yeah, so we did that, and I can't speak to the meat and poultry processing expansion program because I didn't do all of the RFA for that because that's an RD program. But for local MCAP, we did do that. And so we actually said we would fund and we encourage funding of byproduct processing. And that was part of, in the scoring criteria, that was part of it, is are you also looking at what the byproducts are? I know, coming from a walnut processor, right, you're selling, only 45% of the walnut is the edible meat product, and the rest is shell and other products that we need to find markets for, and that helps bring down the cost of processing and brings new revenue streams. So that was something we put in intentionally in local MCAP. But I think it's absolutely true that we need to have more market facilitation of byproducts as well. So we do have some byproduct processing grants that we've done. There's also things like renewable fuels that we've really invested in as well, through, and then also fertilizer production. Probably not as much on the meat side, maybe, I don't know, but fertilizer production as well. And so looking at all of those different revenue streams. So we've been investing in those, but I think as far as like a whole of like marketing type structure, it'd have to, at this point, probably it's more cobbled together. But perhaps it's something that the business centers help look at as well.
That's a good thought for you guys sitting right there in the business centers. Any other questions out there? Yeah, back there, Matthew.
Thanks. This is totally awesome. I'm curious. I'm guessing you've kind of got your fingers on the pulse of understanding the entire landscape, and in this case, the meat system. And we heard earlier that, well, we need more small producers, not necessarily regenerative, but let's invest in small producers. Let's invest in the system. But then we also heard, well, we've got these big processing houses and farms, as you drive up I-5 and whatnot, and we need them because they're eating byproducts, agricultural byproducts. So, in your mind, what's right? If we have to have all of these various players and sizes of players, what's the right mix for essentially sizes? We have a few big ones because we need them for X, Y, or Z, but they provide stability, but then they also provide single points of failure if something goes wrong. So what's the right mix in your mind as you've sort of looked at the food system from where you sit in the USDA?
Well, we definitely need more small and mid-size regional scale processing. We know that for a fact. That has been declining or not keeping up with demand. And so I think that's the biggest thing that we've been investing in. So we're not investing in the larger processing operations at all. They've got to figure it out on their own. We're investing in small and mid-size. And so through programs like local MCAP, we've invested in over 250 either new or expanded processing operations. The MPEP program has also been investing in about, I think, 40 or 50 processing operations. So we are investing in more of the small and mid-sized processing operation. I think really important also is to not just invest in the size, but also what is the diversity? What are they processing? And where are they processing? When we were looking at all of this and looking at really how to invest the dollars, really knowing, and we worked with our Office of Chief Economist to see where is the meat production, where is the poultry production, where is the where are the vacuums and gaps, and how far are people having to bring their product to processing. So we looked at all of those different factors, so that whether you are, of course, a cattle rancher or a bison producer, a tribal bison producer, of course, our tribal program also is doing fisheries as well, and that's very important too. So we really looked at where are the gaps, how are we investing, what does lamb processing look like in the nation, and where are the gaps or the major processors, or where is there only one place for someone to bring product. So we had our chief economist's office overlay all of those things so that we could really understand where the need was, and really fill that in.
Cliff, you received a grant, right?
Yeah, we received the MCAP grant, and I have a question about that. But first, also wanted to ask, what does the USDA consider small and mid-sized? Maybe, I don't know if it's easiest to talk from like a revenue point of view, as far as a definition. So interested in that. Also interested in, is there a risk of certain grants that have already been awarded being pulled back, I guess, or rescinded with the new administration coming in? We've heard through the grapevines that potentially, depending on like what the sources of funds were, even if you have won a grant, you might not be able to actually access that capital in 6 months. Let's say our project is about an 18-month project, so we were planning on really starting in January, and so it's kind of like we're kind of unsure about the status of that capital.
Well, on your first question, we don't exactly have a definition of what is small, mid-sized processors, but we certainly looked at what like Small Business Administration had as far as their definition. The big thing, honestly, that we were really looking at as we were investing in projects was making sure that those projects weren't going to get absorbed by one of the larger processors, right? That we weren't investing in growing those larger processors. So those were actually some of the things that we really focused on in betting and integrating into the grants, was making sure that the investments are really, truly going to stick in the intention, which is to be able to source from local producers and to provide just a diversity in the marketplace for producers. So that was a big focus that we had as we were designing it and developing it, and it was came from the secretary really to really focus on that, and also how do we develop also the workforce, a high caliber workforce to do that. And so actually some of that $1 billion actually went to workforce training programs as well. Your second question, I wish I had a crystal ball and I could answer your question with certainty. But what I can say is we've been, the money is obligated. This gets into like wonky like government terms, but because the grant has been announced and funded, the money is now obligated. So it's on the books as being obligated. It would take a significant effort, and I would imagine Congress would really want to weigh in if someone wanted to de-obligate a already obligated and allocated money and use it for something else.
Could be a battle. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts out here? Yes, Avim.
Hello. Quick question. What is the focus or the prime focus for your technical assistance program, and what are the requirements to qualify?
So for the meat and poultry processing technical assistance, you have to be a meat and poultry processor to be able to qualify for that. Basically, you just pick up the phone or email. So you can go to, we love our acronyms at USDA. So I'm sure if you go to MPPTA or Meat and Poultry Processing Technical Assistance, and search USDA, you'll get the whole list of technical assistance providers, and just reach out to them and say, hey, I'd love to be able to talk with you about business plan development. I'd love to talk about, grant application assistance, grant implementation assistance. That was a really important thing, is to make sure, like, okay, great, we've got this grant, but now there's all this reporting requirement that I need help with. And so they can do grant implementation assistance. They can help with HACCP or development. They can bring all of the different. Essentially, it's very open what we have said they can do as far as funding, as far as, of course, they're providing technical assistance to meat and poultry processors and distributors as well.
Do they have to be a certain scale?
No.
They have to be a certain. They can be any scale. Okay, big or small. Okay, good. Anything else? We have a couple more minutes. Yes, Agnes from UCOP.
Thank you. I know you mentioned you don't have a crystal ball, but do you have any thoughts on what we might expect might happen at the USDA with the incoming administration?
Well, I think, time will tell. Time will for sure tell on that. But what I can say is, you all are testament to this in this room. The work is going to continue, because the work really happens on the ground with producers, with buyers, with the groundswell of the community that have been championing this work for quite some time. That work is going to continue. The investment that we have made is there, and it will continue. So I think what it looks like at USDA, I don't know. Of course, we have a lot of career staff at AMS, at Rural Development, that really are passionate about the food systems, and they're not going away. So there is, and of course we have the regional food business centers that have been funded, they're established, they're there to support food producers. So there is just a whole groundswell of work that's been happening. The local food purchase assistance, we're on round 3 of funding that program because it is so wildly popular. So we started off with a first round of funding, $400 million. Then we did another round with $500 million, another round just in September that the Secretary announced of another $500 million. Local Foods for Schools, $200 million in their first round. This round we did $500 million. There's so much demand for how we, through the food supply chain and how we buy, whether it's through food banks, whether it's through schools, and now child care settings. We announced a new program there. Of course, farm to hospital is also farm to prison. There's just so much opportunity that's going to happen, I think, through the work that is already being done in the communities and in the regions. And so I can't say what, as far as leadership direction is going to happen. Time will tell there, but I can say that we've got the Army in place with all the boots on the ground, and you all and so many more across the nation who are making this happen.
All right. I think with that, we'll call it a day, unless you have any. I have one last question for you. So it's interesting. When I first met you years ago, you were working with your family's farm, and then you went to CDFA, and you spent several years there really working on environmental programs with the Secretary. And then you went to USDA, so you've done a lot of different things. What are you most proud of?
At USDA?
In your career.
I think the thing that I am most proud of, and I learned a lot of this from Secretary Vilsack and also Secretary Ross, which is when we invest in, when we spend the time up front listening to what is the need, taking that time to really understand what's the need, what are people wanting, and really partnering with the folks who are actually implementing and going to be benefiting from the programs, that makes everything stick and meaningful. And we talk right now about institutionalization, right? And that was been our focus all along. And so for me, I think what I'm most proud of is in any role that I've played, looking back after I've left, what continues and has a life of its own beyond any one administration or pot of funding or any work that we've done. I'm really proud of just the systems approach we've taken on food systems transformation. I'm really proud of the organic transition initiative that we've done. I'm really proud of the team that we've developed and we've championed both at USDA as well as across the country. I think taking this pivotal moment and really pivoting and really making traction happen. So you say what's going to happen in the future. I really do feel that we have, and the thing that I'm most proud of is that we've really invested in just the capacity, in the momentum. And when you invest in the momentum, that momentum continues.
Good. We'll look forward to seeing it. So thank you, everyone, for your attention. Let's thank the Secretary. So there's a little transition period here, and then we're going to have our reception and a goat tasting. We're going to hear from Secretary Ross will be coming to make some comments, and then we're going to have a big dinner. So look forward to hanging out with y'all. What do you... Oh, looking back and looking forward. I totally forgot. Thank you very much.